What's the real reason behind the tensions between Israel and Gaza? Many theorize that a $55 billion canal megaproject could be the motivator behind Israel's retaliation, which, if built, could make Israel, the USA, and Great Britain $6 billion a year just from its operations. It would also reshape world trade politics completely and likely involve the destruction of Gaza. So, what's up with Israel's $55 billion canal proposal? Let's find out today. The Ben Gurion Canal Plan is a proposed construction megaproject designed to connect the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea through the southern end of Gaza. The canal was named after Israel's founding father, David Ben Gurion, as an alternative to the Egyptian Suez Canal. The Suez Canal is the primary shipping route connecting Europe and Asia, an artificial sea-level water entrance in Egypt that connects the North Atlantic and the northern Indian Oceans. The Suez Canal is so important that on its own it handles roughly 12% of the world's trade, providing the shortest sea route between Asia and Europe. Over 20,000 ships sail through this route every year. Israel building the Ben Gurion Canal would cause Egypt to lose its monopoly over the primary trade route between Europe and Asia, increasing Israel and its allies' economic importance and disrupting that of other Arab countries. It would also give Israel, the USA, and Great Britain great sway on the international supply chains of oil, gas, and grains, and also general world trade. Israel would depend much less on other countries for food, energy, and medicines. They'd have an independent supply chain. This proposed canal would be almost one-third longer than the 193.3 kilometer Suez Canal. One of the possible routes for it would be through the Araba Valley for around 100 kilometers, with the port city of Eilat and the Jordanian border in mind. But what's preventing Israel from starting this project, considering the support they'd get from many Western countries? The short answer is Gaza. The primary obstacle preventing Israel from starting the project is presence of Palestinians in the area. This makes things take a more sinister context, considering how it's been theorized that Israel's new reason for responding to the Hamas attack on October 8th was to get a valid reason for destroying Gaza. With Gaza leveled, they'd have a much easier time with the construction of the Ben Gurion Canal. You'll probably wonder how building this canal involves destroying Gaza in the first place. So, let us dissect why. Although it wasn't in the original design, many Israeli politicians proposed the Ben Gurion Canal's last port to be in Gaza. Should Gaza be razed to the ground, planners could cut costs and shorten the route of the canal by diverting it into the Gaza Strip. But is it realistic to think that all of these tensions are just part of Israel's endgame of building its canal to compete with Egypt's? Well, money talks, and one has only to look at the numbers to see why. The Suez Canal presented an annual revenue of $9.4 billion just in the 2022-2023 fiscal year, from $7 billion to prior years, as per the Suez Canal Authority's SCA chairman Osama Rabi. Anyone in their right mind would want to get their hands on the Suez Canal or build something similar to compete with it. While the idea of the Ben Gurion Canal project isn't new, it re-emerged for the first time in decades during the Abrahamic Accords of 2021 between Israel and Morocco, Sudan, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates. On April 2, 2021, Israel stated they'd start the project in June 2021, but the project was shelved once more, as it had been for nearly centuries. The proposal for the Ben Gurion Canal isn't new, but it's always spoken about and then forgotten for decades until an economic disaster takes place and countries resume proposals. It all began during the mid-1800s when the British considered the benefits of a canal connecting the Red Sea, the Dead Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea. This alternative Suez Canal would vastly benefit their trade operations in Africa and the Middle East. A naval officer and explorer named William Allen took it upon his hands to lay out the possible canal. It would connect the Mediterranean Sea, the Gulf of Aqaba, the Red Sea, and the Indian Ocean, though the idea never came to fruition. Then, in 1888, the sea powers of Great Britain, Spain, France, Italy, Hungary, the Netherlands, and others signed the Convention of Constantinople, ensuring that the Suez Canal would be open to ships of all nations at all time, regardless of war or peace. But this agreement wasn't exactly fulfilled after Egypt stopped Israel from accessing it from 1948 to 1950. At the time, Israel had just been established after the Nakba, the mass displacement and dispossession of around 750,000 Palestinians. This caused the Suez Crisis when the UK, France, and Israel tried to regain control of the canal. As a response, Egypt closed off the canal to all international shipping, causing one of the most catastrophic trade disruptions in maritime history. Then the proposals resurfaced in 1963 when the US also expressed interest in such a route for their trade operations. See how everyone's mostly concerned about making more money? But once more, it was shelved. Finally, the idea resurfaced in March 2021 when another economic disaster took place. Strong gusts of wind in the Suez Canal buffeted the container ship, Ever Given, across the waterway. Its bow and stern stuck on opposite canal banks, essentially making a giant wall with its body. The obstruction lasted 6 days, stranded at least 369 ships, and paralyzing $9.6 billion of trade. The impact was so bad that the Egyptian government had to widen the narrower parts of the canal, or else incur the wrath of the other world powers. It's safe to say that the Suez Canal benefits to Egypt and to other countries in the region are enormous. Of course, this disaster made the US and many Western European countries reconsider the recurring idea of building an alternative to the Suez Canal, one that wouldn't experience such a slowdown due to its bigger size. The Ben Gurion Canal would be more efficient, first because it'd be able to accommodate a larger number of ships and enable two-way navigation of large ships by an engineering innovation, the design of two canal arms. For comparison, the Suez Canal is located along sandy shores, but the Ben Gurion Canal would have rocky walls that needed almost no maintenance. Israel would build all sorts of businesses and even living quarters throughout its space. Small towns, restaurants, hotels and cafes, making it also a fanciable tourist spot. Each of these proposed branches would have a depth of nearly 50 meters and a width of around 200 meters, and it would be 10 meters deeper than the Suez Canal. The largest ships in the world are at least 300 meters long and 110 meters wide, and this canal is going to be big enough to allow them to pass through. But the project keeps being shelved because Israelis and Americans both know no Arab nation would agree to the forceful seizure of Palestinian land, of which the Gaza Strip is the most populated in the world. Plus, the Israelis would never build the canal with its last port in Gaza, knowing that enemy Palestinian territory lies nearby. The canal could be vulnerable to Palestinian attacks by rockets, drones, and howitzers. So, the only plausible way for Israelis to build the canal is to control the Gaza area in the first place. As long as people live in the area, it will be impossible for Israel and its allies to kickstart the Ben Gurion Canal's construction in peace. Furthermore, few countries agree that it's moral to eliminate Gaza just for Israel and the USA to get richer. On the other hand, some Western European countries and the United States seem to be on board with that notion. Let's remember that Israel's attack on Gaza also received support from the United States and several European countries, possibly due to acknowledging the weaknesses of the existing Suez Canal and wishing for its eventual competitor to be constructed. The US had even proposed to use around 520 nuclear bombs on the Negev desert to build the canal by force. The plan would just be easier if Gaza had been razed to smithereens and annexed. Israel could cut corners and reduce costs by diverting the canal through the middle of Palestine. Around 400,000 Palestinians have been displaced from the north to south after Israel launched its attack on the Palestinian enclave. But until then, the project isn't close to starting, and we might never see the Ben Gurion Canal built. The nature of the soil and sea level of the Gaza Strip would also have to be studied and analysed to determine the plausibility of the project, but rest assured that the main reason it's not begun yet is the presence of people living in the area.